Hello there. Welcome to our weekly look at events inside Syria. I'm James Bays. This week, a special edition of the show with our guest, one of the week's key newsmakers. He's one of the highest profile defectors from the regime. Until a few days ago, Nawaf Fares was Bashar al-Assad's ambassador in Baghdad. Why did the ambassador, once known as a confidant of the president, change sides? We'll ask him what's really going on inside the corridors of power in Damascus and find out what he makes of the latest diplomatic moves as rival draft resolutions are exchanged at the UN in the aftermath of yet another massacre, which some claim cost more than 200 lives. Ambassador, welcome to you. And can I start by asking you a simple question? Ambassador, why did you defect now? This has been going on for 16 months. By some estimates, there are 17,000 people killed. Why didn't you defect, say, a year ago?
Why now? Because, as you know, the regime and Bashar al-Assad himself gave us illusions, and the international community received illusions from Bashar al-Assad about reforms, and these reforms will meet the needs and aspirations of the Syrian people. We live within that hope, but we are now convinced that this regime will never do anything for the sake of the people. Lies are going on. The head of the regime is lying. It's mirage, it's illusion, killings everywhere, destruction everywhere, and oppression everywhere. The regime oppressed the revolution and the Syrian people with helicopters and artillery. After we are convinced, we have at that moment to take the national, human and ethical stand and position, the stand that might and has to be taken by every Syrian.
Now, Ambassador, our audience know that you used to be the ambassador in Baghdad until a few days ago, but you've been a prominent figure in Damascus for years. Let's have a look for our viewers at your background and some of your previous positions. Originally from the embattled city of Deir az-Zor, you hail from the Sunni al-Assad tribe in eastern Syria. After a career in the police, you've served as governor in several Syrian provinces. You held senior Baath party positions since the time of the late President Hafez al-Assad. And finally, you were appointed ambassador in Baghdad in 2008, which made you the first Syrian envoy to Iraq for nearly 3 decades. Ambassador, I've been reading some of the blogs, reading some of the comments on Twitter from opposition activists, the people who are supposed to be on your side, and some are very sceptical about you. They say that you are a regime stalwart who has held these security positions in the past. Some even say you may have blood on your hands. Your chance now to defend yourself.
I am from Deir az-Zor, and I served the country for like 34 years, and I had several positions within the party and within the country, security positions as well. I was the mayor for like 10 years, and those who are skeptical, or those who have doubts regarding my new stand, I need to tell them that this is not accurate. They have to be fair, and they have not to have certain agendas behind their doubts. When you say my hands, blood is on my hand, this is not at all correct. And there is a fair judicial system in Syria, and everyone who has a kind of problem will be put to trial and will be receiving the verdicts and the rulings that he deserves in this connection and this regard. And I have assurances that this is not right. There are rumors, there are special agendas, and they are using political issues in this regard.
Ambassador, the official line from the Syrian news agency, they've dismissed your defection. They say it's simply because you had a personal row. What do you say to that?
I have no problems or personal problems with the regime. The head of the regime, Bashar al-Assad, and if I took that step late, like 10 days or so, I was promised by Bashar al-Assad personally to be the vice head of the party. He told me this directly time ago, and his office talked to me like a week before my defection, and they told me to come back to Syria in order to be prepared for this post and this job. On the contrary, they promised me to have nice and good jobs in Syria. The vice president for the Baath party affairs, and this is well known to the political circles in Syria. The president himself promised me personally to take the job instead of Khitan, and a week or 10 days before my defection, his office talked to me, his private office talked to me and invited me to come back to Syria in order to be prepared and to receive and to take that job. I have no personal problems with the regime, but what we have seen in the street, the sufferings of the Syrian citizen is bigger than any job and is bigger than any post, and no one can tolerate, no one has a conscience can tolerate this.
Tell me, why did you defect here in Doha? We're in Qatar right now. Why choose Qatar rather than Turkey, rather than Jordan? Why defect here?
Qatar was my selection in order to be close to the Syrian side, and I can have contact with them. I can serve the cause of my people from the Gulf area. In the Gulf area, I'll be able to have contacts inside Syria. And there is also Syrian community in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia. So being here in Qatar will achieve these targets, the targets of being in contact with the Syrian communities in the Gulf area. And through this Syrian community, I can do something for the Syrians inside the country and for the Syrian cause.
Ambassador, Western diplomats have hailed recent defections as a sign that slowly the regime is beginning to crumble from within. Last week, the Revolutionary Guard commander, Brigadier General Nawaf Fares, defected from Syria. He was a close confidant of Assad and son of a former defence minister. Bassam Imadi, Syrian ambassador to Sweden, left the government in December. He's now a member of the opposition Syrian National Council. And among the many thousands of soldiers who've defected from the Syrian army, around 15 generals are said to have fled to Turkey. A colonel in the Syrian Air Force also sought asylum in June, flying his MiG-21 fighter jet south across the border to a Jordanian airbase. Ambassador, do you see signs of yet more defections on the way? We're hearing a rumour, for example, at the moment about possibly the ambassador to Belarus.
The regime in Syria, following the first 3 months of the blessed revolution, is really affected. The defections were there. Bad feelings in the streets are always available and all over the place. And the regime is losing the Syrians. 95% of the Syrians are now against the regime. That's why everyone who is following the steps of the Free Syrian Army, the civilians in Syria, those who go in peaceful protests, and those can be harm to the regime, can harm the regime. The regime is suffering, but there are some elements from outside Syria that are giving support to the regime. Military support from Russia, military support and financial support from Iran, and the hesitation of the international community. The international community is not taking a concrete step to make al-Assad feel that he will be punished due to his crimes in Syria and against the Syrians. The Russian support, the Iranian support, and the hesitation of the international, or the inability of the international community to protect the Syrian people, these are the main reasons why the regime is buying time and is staying for a longer period of time. But from inside, the regime is dead economically, within the Syrian people, socially, in all domains. The Syrians are in one way, and the regime is in another total different way. The tanks, the aircraft, the helicopters are killing the civilians, the Syrians, and the world is witnessing, and the world is not able to take a certain concrete step to force Bashar to step down. That's why the Russians and the Iranians are giving some support or sort of lifeline to the regime. So without the external support, without the international community that is not able to force, the regime would be stepping down for a long time ago.
Tell me, how hard is it to defect? How hard is the regime making it for diplomats like yourself, for senior army officers, for senior officials? How hard is it to change sides?
Yes. Yes. It's very hard politically. It's very hard because the way you defect, it's hard, it's difficult. We are in a country that is governed by a tyranny, a dictator, and all those who are in the political field, from his vice president down to the other levels, are under control, under the microscope, if I could say. It's quite difficult to defect, to practically defect. And
so, Ambassador, can I ask you this? Are you worried about retribution towards members of your wider family and your associates who are still inside Syria?
Yes, for sure. For sure. I'm completely concerned. My relatives, my family in Syria, and the regime has started the pressures. And my nephew, for example, Nawaf Fares, was summoned to the military security, and he was forced to sign a statement regarding myself, and they threaten him, they will kill him if he refuses to sign this statement. Yes, for sure. My family, my relatives are under pressure, immense pressure in Syria, but they are members of the Syrian people. They have to pay the price. They are all under threats.
Ambassador, I'd like to get your insight into what's going on inside the corridors of power in Damascus. Do you think the regime has a plan, or do you think it's just desperate and panicking?
The regime in Syria feels the heat, because I used to be with them, but the regime feels that the people will achieve the victory end of the day. The regime is trying to depend on the military force. The regime is trying to have a role in the future of the new Syria, but this is impossible. The Syrians will refuse that. The regime is in despair, and the regime is desperate for that. All the levels in Syria know and are convinced that this regime is dead. It's a matter of time, a month, 2 months, a year, 2 years, but the regime will come to an end, definitely. History tells us that. And
you say the regime, Ambassador. Who exactly is the regime? Is Bashar al-Assad himself giving the orders? Is it him running the show? Tell us about who exactly is giving the orders.
The one who gives the orders is Bashar, and all the military and the civil categories are employees to obey his orders.
But do you think Bashar, when he gives these orders, is being given correct information? Because we've seen in the past, you go back to the days of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, you look at what was happening last year in Libya. Gaddafi was lied to by those around him. Saddam was lied to by those around him. Do you think they're telling Bashar the truth when he gives these orders?
Bashar, in a practical way, is out, is away. And for sure, his security elements, his military elements are not giving him the proper information. And the most important thing, the tyranny and his allies are willing to do whatever in order to stay in their positions. Every tyrant left by force, and he is one of them.
You know Bashar al-Assad quite well. I'd like to just examine his character a little more, because he was once seen as the reformer, the modernizer, the man who lived a normal life with a young family, with a Western-educated wife. Now he's seen as the son of a dictator who's following his father's ways. Which is the real Bashar?
The real Bashar is quite different than Bashar we know and we see. He carries the genes of a dictator, and his father killed the people 30 years ago.
Do you think he talks about reform, the regime talk about reform? Is there room now for reform and negotiation, or has that time passed?
It's impossible. It is impossible. The time has passed, and reforms could have given some fruits if applied at the very beginning of the revolution, but after waves of blood, it's quite impossible for the Syrians to trust Bashar al-Assad again and to accept his existence in Syria even.
Can I ask you about the military and the state of the Syrian military right now? How many loyal units can the regime rely on? Tell us what you think the state of the army and the rest of the military is right now.
The military situation in Syria is shaking. The force is shaking, and the military institution is living a crisis. And the next days or the next future will prove this. The army will never stay solid as it is. The army will shake up. They are now concentrating on the elite of the military institutions to go to the hot areas, but there's threats imposed on the army because of the defections and so on, because of the killings and oppression. Yes, even the officers and the elements are oppressed. This will never go forever.
Let us look at the wider diplomatic picture, if we can now, and fresh discussions taking place, rival resolutions at the United Nations, but they come with news of yet another massacre that's taken place, and a very strongly worded statements come out in the last few hours from Kofi Annan. Let me quote what he said. I'm shocked and appalled by news coming out of the village of TREMSEH near Hama and the confirmed use of heavy weaponry such as artillery, tanks and helicopters. This is in violation of the government's undertaking to cease the use of heavy weapons in population centres and its commitment to the six-point plan. It is desperately urgent that this violence and brutality stops, and more important than ever that governments with influence exert it more effectively to ensure the violence ends immediately. Ambassador, I'm suggesting that maybe those governments with influence he's referring to are Russia and China. Do you think this massacre will change anything at the UN?
The regime of Bashar al-Assad and Bashar al-Assad himself is known to everyone. Those who dealt with him know that he is a liar. The last visit of Annan to Syria, he told Annan so many things that made Annan feel comfortable when it comes to the solution, because al-Assad promised, and then the TREMSEH crime or the TREMSEH massacre happened. This man or this president says something and does something else. All the world leaders now know this. He is not honest, he is not serious, and he is buying time. He's only buying time.
Now, Ambassador, the opposition that you join is an opposition that is disorganised and in disarray. Lots of different opposition groups. They don't all seem to get on. Even among the ranks of the opposition, among the fighters, we know there are some who have links with jihadist groups, with al-Qaeda. Do you feel comfortable with the opposition that you are joining, and what role could you perform within the opposition?
This is the reality of the opposition. Yes, this is the reality of the opposition, and we hope the opposition will be gathered and will be unified. And when it comes to Al-Qaeda, if there's Al-Qaeda in Syria, it's Al-Qaeda that are presided over by Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad has links since 2003 with Al-Qaeda. And I think some Arab countries and foreign countries know this. He has a bad role played in Iraq and in slaughtering the Iraqis and in the destruction that took place in Iraq. Al-Qaeda in Syria is made by the regime, and the regime is accepting this. The regime in Syria contains security and military elements that are making use of Al-Qaeda against the Syrians and to terrorize the outside world. If there is Al-Qaeda in Syria, it is made then by the regime and it is coordinated with the regime. All the explosions, the big explosions that happened in Syria are with the coordination between Al-Qaeda and the regime.
You have proof of that?
Terrorize.
Do you have proof of that, Ambassador?
All the evidence say that when the Palestinian branch in the intelligence and the branch was evacuated 15 minutes before the explosion, and to keep before the explosion only the civilian prisoners and victims from the streets, from the surrounding, and none of the members of the branch is hurt. This is an evidence to say that the regime knows about the explosion and the regime evacuated or evacuates the branch, and they kept only the prisoners in the cells of this branch. Everyone who has a brain, who has a vision, can see this. There is coordination, a sort of coordination. We have so many indications. Those who are interested locally, regionally, and internationally know about this. There is a big cooperation between Al-Qaeda and the regime of Bashar al-Assad since 2003. And a lot of operations were done in Iraq against the coalition and against the Iraqis.
Okay, Ambassador, I want to ask you one final question, and that is a really difficult one, predicting the future. How do you think the crisis in Syria is going to end, and how long will it take?
The Syrian people have paid the high price and will pay the price. The Syrians are keen to continue and complete the revolution, whatever time it takes. The Syrian people has a will, and this will achieve the victory, and we hope the free world, the European countries, the United States, to do the best in order to minimize the losses and minimize the price paid and to be paid by the Syrians, because the more the crisis goes on, the more price the Syrians will pay. The regime will be defeated at the end, but we ask the free world, the international community, to intervene and to minimize the losses in Syria. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our guests. Thank you, Ambassador Nawaf Fares. And thanks to you for watching. Those who want to see the show again online, you can go to our website, aljazeera.com. That's all from the Inside Syria team for now. From me, James Bass. Bye-bye.